I guess I can start about my confessions. I need to
Great,
talk about them.
great.
Well, so this morning I came in sort of with a long bias based on the banks were going to be strong, which was sort of right off the open, but I wasn't looking to trade the banks because I'm already long term book wise. I'm already pretty invested in them. So I was looking at some of the names, like some with weakness, and names like continued to trade 3M, which broke all support, and then I tried to play yesterday's support, and I just kept getting chopped up because it kept going. The little ticks were maybe like 20 cents a piece, so I kept getting literally just whipsawed around. So basically, I just really just cut my losses this morning and just trying to start over, really wait for a direction in this market before I really jump back into anything. But my
I,
story
I,
of this
I,
morning was I got chopped up really good
yeah. Well,
on
let's
key supports.
right. So let's
Sorry.
talk about that. So no, I'd like to sort of, if possible, you sort of react to it and ask you, where could you have improved? What could you have done to change your strategy? What if you have this day, and this is an interesting phrase, but what if you had this day to do over? What would you do? How would you have handled
Uh,
yourself?
well, at least when I'm thinking back about it now, every time there was a new lower support, I'd increase my size,
So,
thinking that it should bounce. So instead of like my normal trade of maybe like 200 or 300 shares, I went 6, 700 shares at that lower support after getting stopped out the first time. And then just constantly getting stopped out at the bottom, my losses started to increase, and I started trying to push to make it back. Um, so all in all, I
I,
pretty much stopped myself out from doing anything
right.
right now.
No, listen, you're totally saying the right things. Um, hold on. No, you're totally saying the right thing, and this is how you get better, and this is how everybody grows as a trader, and it grows as a trader. And think about it. I'm trading for all these years, and I'm the first one to hop on and to confess my sins, as I think that it is the only way to get better and to grow as a trader and to understand and recognize what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. One thing that you always need to remember is to make sure that you're doing there's a big difference between doubling down and getting a better average price. So ultimately, you did the right thing because you taught yourself how to punch out positions. Ultimately, at the end, as much as you want to convince yourself, the biggest problem of any trader is that they hold on for positions for way too long, losing positions. And my frustration lied in that BYD trade earlier in the morning as it broke the level and broke all the way down to the bottom. Now, I could have easily continued to buy and buy and buy. I actually just waited till it firmed up, bought some stock down there at about 69 cents, sold some to test the market, to test the feel of what the market's feeling like, what the market maker setup is feeling like on that name. And then I held the rest of my shares to ultimately lose, I don't know, 6 cents on 7,000 shares or so. And go ahead. You want to interrupt? Um, no problem, no problem. And so that's really where my train of thought is also is focus on the growth, focus on what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Are you going to are you doubling down or are you getting a better average price? So the difference is when you're getting a better average price, if you're buying a stock, let's say a stock is trading at, for argument's sake, 50 cents. When it gets down to 30 cents, you might buy a little more. You get down to the whole number, you might buy a little bit more. You have two ways to look at it. One, you're holding the stock for too long, and you should be out within 5 cents or 7 cents, and then rebuy it in order to punch it out if it goes down a little bit. Like I'd always rather see more small losses on somebody's screen, and that's what I always have, and that's why I'm able to grind out a consistent return very often, almost always. And the reason is because I punch out little losses, and you'll always see little losses. So if I employed a loss on BYD, I'm up 2 grand today, $442. So that's why I always focus on what my bigger losses are for the day, and I try to avoid those at all costs. And what did I do wrong to make that mistake?
Well,
So there. Go ahead. So
I
so
I was gonna ask you a question. Let me just give a sort of a small example on like what was part of like how my thought process sort of worked out, and look for some help from you guys on this. So this morning I was looking at GM. So it traded off. I was looking for levels of support where the last few days it's literally been around 34, 33.96 or so. So I first entered my trade around 44.08. Just a small position, just a starter, and then when it dipped down to 44.02, I loaded up with a stop at 33.96.
Oh, 33, because you threw me off. You were saying 40, but so it's 33.96 on GM.
Oh, I'm sorry, 34 and 33.96. Yeah.
Okay.
So those were like my stops and like my major buy was. And then when it broke through all that, I punched out of the whole position just to sort of see, where we were. And then it just dropped all the way down to 80. And just right now, like, it held 83 times, and I loaded up the boat, like, maybe around 85 or so with a stop at 80. And now that it looks like it's slowly coming back. But I did that with several positions, not just GM today, but like positions like 3M. I try to replay those supports of yesterday, which just completely broke down on me every single time. And then along with Deckers, which just literally just chopped me up because of the spreads. And then so yeah, I think that's the story of my morning.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's great, and you're actually doing what every person out there should be standing in line to sort of talk about it, confess, ask, keep going through it as this is important. And you've touched on many very important items that we need to continuously discuss, and this is definitely one of them. And I mean, you got to sort of try to improve your own performance in one way or another, whether it be to cut your losers a little bit shorter, to save some ammo, we talk about it, save some ammo in your belt, to be able to get back at the right price or the bottom price. There are other ways to maximize and to continue to push your strategy. I think that if I could point out at anything that I heard that's sort of a little bit of erroneous is just the fact that you had like more of a long bias versus a short bias. When I generally like for the market to dictate where we're going and what we're doing in that space and those names in particular. And if you look at the names on your screen, I wouldn't think that the GM at that point would be the stronger one, and especially if you take a look at any of those charts, it did have that support down at about looks like about 34.05, and it broke that support a couple times just to pull in about 25 cents from there, which is a handsome pull-in. So maybe and we talk about it every day, and one of the reasons why we do this is because we need to be able to continuously post and inform on what's strong, what's weak, what's looking like what, which directions, which sectors, and so on. Like, when I spoke about some of those regional bank names, it's a type of informative information to give people sort of a little more in tune on, oh, that's interesting, I'll take a look at that and I'll watch that. And it happened to be that a stock like Fifth Third pulled in about 40 cents. Now, I only made $200 on it, but, because of the community, somebody else can make 5,000 or 50,000 or 200,000, and if not, it helps them in their overall portfolio, longer term positions, options, and so on. And that's why we keep putting it out there to try to inform. So I try to stay away from a bias. If I do, I wait for it to materialize. If I do have a bias, so if I did feel like a GM long, probably would have looked for some of those support levels, which I'm sure you did. Don't get me wrong. But then if they didn't hold, I'd wait for the next. What I look to do is I look to punch out my losers really quickly, and then I'll get back in no matter at a different level. Like I say, I like to see some small losses in order to hop back in and get some really bigger gains or maximized gains versus my losses that I continue to punch out for all these years.
Okay.
But that's great commentary. Continue to keep talking about it, and it'll not only help you, but it'll help the better of the community to keep on revisiting what the problems, what good morning was like, and we're all anonymous, and I don't care what kind of size or what kind of person's bigger, smaller. All these rules are fundamental rules of trading.